Welcome back to today's episode. We're here to talk about The Brother's Son. On this podcast, we like to review the most recent installment of a different series every show. The overview of this series is Charles' son, a Taipei gangster and ruthless killer, travels to LA to protect his mother and younger brother after his father is shot by a mysterious assassin. To me, it felt a little bit like Supernatural, where Dean shows up at Sam's doorstep and is like, Dad's missing. Well, in this case, Dad's dead, right?
Well, no, Dad is actually in a coma.
Dad's in a coma?
Yeah.
In the promotional cover photo, it has, I think, their dad's head swimming in a fish tank behind their... Have you seen this one? It's
No.
the one with Michelle Yeoh and the two sons, and they're sitting at the front, and I thought it was the dad's character's
like they're
head.
in a restaurant, right?
Yes, they're
Or
in a
something.
restaurant. So you have seen that. Is it the
Yes.
dad in the background?
I didn't see the dad, but the dad only shows up for like one scene.
Well, if the dad's not dead, then they definitely bring him back by the end of the eight episodes. But you only watched the pilot. We're here to only talk about the pilot. This is really an introduction. I thought what you were going to tell me was that the Supernatural comparison is bad because Charles and Bruce don't know each other. The two brothers are complete strangers. In fact, from what I understand, Bruce doesn't even know anything about the gangster lifestyle of his parents or his brother.
Completely separate life.
All right, so when it comes to the reviews for this show, I'm going to pop in here and say most of them mention the contrast as being one of the best parts of the show. First, you have the comedy element of it mixed with the drama/action. Then you have the new cast, the two newbies, the two brothers. They've never really been in anything beforehand.
So Charles' son had never been in anything before this. I thought that he looked familiar to me.
Charles' son, Justin Chien, he's I think he's a workaholic because it sounds like he does a lot of taekwondo and jiu-jitsu and all that stuff. But he's from Taiwan, and he actually got this job after like a ton of auditioning, after like months and months and months. Then they had to do production where he was training with the John Wick people.
Yes, no. So the first scene was something straight out of John Wick or The Raid, where it's mostly one shot.
It's 8711, which is the same company that did John Wick. It's the same company that
Not
did Day
surprised
Shift.
at all.
It's the same director that was supposed to do a Mortal Kombat movie or television show back in the day. Ended up dropping out. But Michelle Yeoh is really the centerpiece of what all the headlines were mentioning. You got Michelle Yeoh anchors Netflix's stylized gangster series. That's what the rap says. Michelle Yeoh steals the show time. Michelle Yeoh is supreme and gloriously lethal in this gangster comedy. That's The Guardian. And obviously we talked about her when we did the, what was it?
American-born Chinese
show from last year. But does this feel like that's the same character? Is there everything everywhere all at once?
Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of my favorite movies, so I definitely like Michelle Yeoh a lot, but I think that might be giving her too much praise, because not only is she not in the pilot episode as much as someone like Charles' son, who is probably my favorite character because he plays the badass character, but also Bruce, like you were saying, Bruce son, the younger son, the one that is almost
the younger brother,
the Henry from The Americans, where he is living a completely different life, even though he lives with Michelle Yeoh.
Well, it's both kids up until a point in The Americans.
Yes.
But Bruce, doesn't he have that come to Jesus' moment in this episode? Does he not realize by the end of it that his family is involved?
He does, but for, like, in the first scene, Charles, there's three masked men that break into his apartment in Taipei, and like I said, it's a John Wick fight scene. It's very much like Fubar and Obliterated, where the action scenes are almost too good for a show like this, because, and also it's
By a Netflix show, you mean? Or just in general
it
action
feels
shows?
like it's almost over budget, because the story's so stupid when you really boil it down. In that way, it's a lot like the Brothers Grimsby, nice guys, ride along Central Intelligence.
What is this story that you're saying is so simple?
Whenever you have a character that plays an assassin, they're always going to play the straight man, and then you always have the comic relief, like I was saying with something like Ride Along, it was Kevin Hart and Ice Cube. Or with Nice Guys, it was Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe.
With brothers, though, is particularly Alan and Charlie and Two and a Half Men, Dean and Sam, they always had that like kind of funny banter between the two of them. Loki and Thor, Michael Scofield, Lincoln Burrows. It doesn't matter if it's a drama or a comedy. Raymond, and I'm trying to remember his brother in Everybody Loves Raymond. But yeah, like whenever there's the angst between the two of them, but the loving angst.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not really angst between, because like you said, they don't know each other. But I would even also put Chuck in there, where it's like you have the fish out of water character.
And the action scenes, too.
The one one that is thrown into this crazy world when the biggest thing that happened to them in the first like 30 minutes of the episode is they're trying to cover their tuition fee, so they go to their friend and their friend is like, here, we can sell drugs.
Is the friend JK or something like that?
Yeah, TK, I think.
TK, okay, yeah. So we'll get into him later. But when you were talking about just the overall plot of this, what makes it stupid?
Bruce in his comedy, or the fact that Michelle Yeoh, Mama's son, is treating Bruce like it's still the most important thing is him being in college.
Is Bruce a parachute kid? Do you know what a parachute kid is?
No, I don't.
That's a foreign-born Chinese youth or Hong Kong youth, Taiwan youth, Taiwanese youth who comes to America for the particular reason to seek an education, like one that was a baby when they were brought over.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's what the show was saying.
And are they wealthy? Like,
no, that's the whole point.
Oh, Mama's son isn't wealthy, despite the fact that her like husband was a huge gang person. Like,
Bruce is not able to pay his tuition.
Interesting.
He's going to college and he's taking the classes, but when he's speaking to, I don't know if it's a counselor or someone in college, they're like, you're going to have to pay $5,000 in the next day or couple days, or else this last semester that you've been taking courses with is not going to matter. That's why he turns to drug dealing. That's why he goes to TK, his best friend's place, and TK is like, there's a way that you're going to be able to make this money back, but it's not going to be something that you're going to like.
So his family, he was raised in not like a rich community, like they live in LA, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you'd think that Mama's son would have a nest egg there that she would then be using.
I think it was also
partly
Mama's son doesn't want to pay for Bruce's education. Because what Bruce did that was kind of sneaky is he actually got $5,000 from his mom to pay for the education, but then he decided to take an acting class, one that apparently Rachel Dratch and Will Ferrell are alums of, but didn't tell his mom. So that's why he needs the $5,000. I think that's a joke on like
UCB because Amy Poehler was an alum of that, and so the actual actor took Groundlings classes, I think, to prepare sort of in the same mindset as his character. Also, before he was cast, I think he was doing YouTube videos where he would do skits and stuff. So he has a comedy background.
That makes sense.
You like the acting overall?
Yes, the acting I thought was probably one of the best things about the show.
I'm going to jump back into what the rest of the reviews have been talking about, which is this contrast, because you have the creator of Glee mixed with the John Wick production team. But the creator of Glee, his name is Brad Falchuk. He spun off and made his own production studio, Television Productions. He's married to Gwyneth Paltrow, who also has a series that is very infamous on Netflix. And so they are working together. It's actually an all-Asian writing team, except for Brad Falchuk.
So are you saying that Gwyneth Paltrow is producing this? Because you said they're working together.
No, I'm saying that Gwyneth Paltrow has the Goop Show, whatever that is.
Right.
And he has his own deal, Brad Falchuk does, which I think has been redesigned for them for where he's able to pitch it to whatever network he wants, but Netflix gets the first look at it. Okay. But getting back to this, Brad Falchuk just happens to be dyslexic. So one of the interesting things about the series, The Brother's Son, is that it's not based on source material like a lot of the shows. I think every show we're doing this month has source material attached to it.
And you're working with a TV show, that means you have to make the pitch really good.
Exactly, because he says, if somebody submits a book to adapt, I'm not reading it until it's gone far enough down the line where I absolutely have to. That's sure. So it makes sense that he would jump aboard a series like this, which was actually not inspired by Chinese or Taiwanese triads, but actually the Japanese Yakuza. We talked about the Japanese Yakuza in Tokyo Vice. It played a central role in what was going on there. But this has to do with like the 90s. So like Brad Falchuk, one of the creators of this show, also had a different creator of the show who pitched it to him. I think his name was Byron Wu. But Byron Wu, he decided that instead he's going to augment the idea of what he stole from Juzo Itami. Juzo Itami, have you heard of him before?
No.
Okay, so he was this film director / screenwriter back in the 80s and 90s. He made like 11 films. He's the type of screenwriter who like includes his own wife in most of his films. He includes a bunch of reoccurring people. He was Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino. You can go onto his Wikipedia. Unfortunately, he had a strange death. In 1997, he was assumed to have committed suicide by jumping off a roof there was even a suicide note saying that he didn't want this affair coming out, which was published then a week later. But in reality, what had happened was all his films and stuff were like societal messaging, right?
Yes.
And so he was very anti-Yakuza, and he would make anti-Yakuza satires. And in 1992, he made a film called Minbo, The Gentle Art of Japanese Extortion. And in 1992, he was then attacked before or after this film, like a week or two after it was released, by these mobsters who cut his face very slowly, part of the Yakuza, basically saying, hey, back off. And he came out with an interview not soon afterwards saying, the mobsters are paper tigers whose ferocity crumbles when confronted with careful resistance. The fact that I was attacked proves that what I pointed out in my film was correct. If I was wrong, they wouldn't have reacted so strongly. I pointed out the truth, and they wanted to stop the information from spreading.
It's the polar opposite of Al Capone loving the movie Scarface. That's kind of what I'm getting.
Or social media, right? Or social network, where Mark Zuckerberg said that he enjoyed that film, right?
Yeah. It's also very much like Daredevil, because I think the Yakuza were villains in Daredevil, and you said people worked on this show, also worked on that.
The Yakuza are really interesting because over the last 20 years, they're much less strong than they were back then. Yeah. It's actually sort of a dying off thing in gang-wise. They're still much bigger than what Taiwan gangs would be. So like it's funny that they're centering this story around Taipei and the gangsters there, because it's much less massive than the Yakuza.
Well, I think one of the best things about the show is, even though I'm sure we're going to get a overall villain, is that the second that Charles' son steps off the plane, you even see that a flight attendant pulls out her phone and starts alerting everyone, because we see that there's not just one organization or one person coming after Charles' son. There is a ton of people that want him dead.
He is John Wick, then.
Yes.
He is Keanu Reeves.
The second that he gets into Los Angeles, there's multiple people that
the bounty goes out on his head.
Yes. Yeah. It's not even as crazy as that, though. The thing is that it's
a D-scale John Wick.
It never breaks the bends of reality. I felt with John Wick 4 it did. Here, it at least keeps
just with
it
4?
in its world.
Okay, yeah. Did you mention anything about food? Because in San Gabriel Valley, where the show was filmed, you have a lot of it's like an Asian American enclave. Is the way they put it. And in the back room of a Newport Seafood is where they have a mahjong club, which is like a gambling club, and that's part of the show, but maybe not in the first episode.
In the first episode, really, it centers around, especially by the end, a dance club, because that's where TK takes Bruce, and then he meets kind of the person that's giving all the drugs to people because they want them to sell them at the dance club, named May. But May. I didn't get anything with food. The only thing I remember is like we get a short little montage with Bruce to introduce his character to see he's still living at home, and he heats up a burrito maybe.
So
he's also an Uber driver.
So Bruce and Charles have not like really met yet.
They meet at the nightclub, and the second that Charles like runs into Bruce, it's actually kind of intense, but Bruce doesn't know that that's Charles. Sure. It takes till they go to the back room, and May even knows who Charles is because she checks his ID, and she uses like 4 of her people to just start beating him up, or else she's going to shoot Bruce. And then suddenly an explosion happens because we kept on getting this intercut of motorcyclists driving to some place. We realize that they're driving to the back of the dance club. An explosion happens, and that is people that are also trying to kill Charles. That's what I mean by so many villains going on.
If Charles is supposed to be such a cool Taipei guy, right? Like he is one of the leaders there, then who's in control here?
That's the question that I think the show is trying to ask, because once Charles makes it to Los Angeles, he goes to Mama Sun's house, where Mama Sun and Bruce are living, and no one is there except for an assassin trying to kill him. Mm-hmm. And when Charles finally does kind of defeat the assassin, he asks who he's working for, and the assassin doesn't answer. So I'm sure, that's why I'm saying, I know there's going to be an overall villain.
Well, he's trying to figure out who went after his dad, right? And you saw that scene as well, the one where his dad gets shot?
Yes.
All right, and this mysterious assassin, does he wear a mask every time? Or?
There's a lot of people wearing masks. The motorcyclists are wearing motorcycle masks. The 3 people that he kills at the beginning are wearing masks. The assassin at the home is wearing a mask. Everyone, basically.
Is it too much action, not enough comedy? Or
no,
just
actually,
the right amount?
So that's the thing that I'm kind of mixed with, because the comedy, even though there are plenty of jokes, and you can tell that some of them are funny, I didn't actually find it to be that great. I thought it was more entertaining, and also with the action and just what's going on with Charles, rather than it is with Bruce. Bruce, which is why I think we're past the worst of it with the pilot.
Okay.
I see it as like the first Hobbit movie, where I know people were not a big fan of that first Hobbit movie, but afterwards they kind of liked the second and third film, even though I disagree with that opinion. Here it's like, okay, Bruce finally knows that he's in this crazy life. Literally, Mama's son at the very end of the episode has a power drill and is chopping it up Daredevil style, the assassin that was at her home, and saying, Bruce, you have a test to be studying for. So it's like, we're obviously going to be getting probably some of that funny interaction that the reviews are talking about, and a crazy Michelle Yeoh, which I think is the best type of performance that we can get from her, especially after Everything Everywhere All at Once. But for the pilot itself, I felt like there were slow parts and there were good parts, which is why I would even it out to like a 6 out of 10.
You're gonna give it a 6 out of 10, but will you continue watching? Yes, no?
I may like skip through the rest of it just to see how it
Did Charles have a nickname? Did you get to hear his name? Chairleg was the one that he had here, and it makes sense because the 3 largest triads in Taiwan are Bamboo Union, Four Seas Gang, and Heavenly Way Gang, and 2 of the most famous people from Taiwanese like gang trivia history, right? Were nicknamed King Duck or Dry Duck, same person, or Mosquito Brother. That was like the grandfather of the
Mosquito Brother.
Yeah, and this is the brother's son, so maybe there's a connection there. Overall, though, it's supposed to, I think, be a mocking the idea of gangs in general, because Byron Wu, his idea that he took from Juzo Itami's experience was that, and I didn't even explain, when he died, though, a few years later, like maybe 10 years later, that's when the Yakuza took what's the word, responsibility for it, and they said he didn't want to jump off that building. We were basically forcing him to either get shot or jump, and he didn't survive when he jumped. But Byron Wu said that Asian American male masculinity and insecurity was the thing that he was thinking about at the time. That's what caused him to write the characters of Bruce and TK, right? But not necessarily like everything else spread out from that.
Well, so, they're the main comic relief.
Yes. So that's what he's, I think, centering on. Kind of like with when the Holocaust, they tried to make the Hogan's Heroes show all the Nazis to just be jokes.
Yes,
you know, like just making fun of them all the time.
And then maybe that's the reason why whenever it got to Bruce's storyline, it felt like it was so slow. Because with Charles, it was just constant action and really cool action at that. And with Bruce, it was like, yeah, some of the jokes you're saying are funny, but I just don't see really where the story with him is going.
But Charles represents that gang lifestyle.
I know.
It's almost glorifying it from if he's really, really
cool. I think
you
need to see the action scenes to understand.
They're supposed
what I'm
to be
about.
like, this is what Michelle Yeoh said, Buster Keaton or Jackie Chan. And Jackie Chan, I can totally see how he used comedy in every action scene that he did. It would be crazy if he made a guest appearance, but again, that would be this is more about Taiwan, and he's more Chinese. So.
Yeah. Also, I do feel like with Jackie Chan films, and maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, but there's always a sense of
there's also Owen Wilson. They need to get Owen Wilson too.
I guess they do go kind of all on crazy with it.
For sure they do. Especially back in the day, especially when he was just doing Chinese films. Sons of Anarchy, Peaky Blinders, Warrior. At least you've seen 2 of those. They're usually pretty cool. Do you see this show being related to that?
Warrior the most, probably. Because but that
Warrior's
was
been
based
saved.
off of,
I think it's going to its 3rd different like network now.
That's probably like its 4th season now, but that was based on Bruce Lee's life, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. And then his sister too. The verdict has been pretty positive around this. You've got a 7.7 on IMDb, 3 out of 5 stars on Guardian, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. And then you have the Hollywood Reporter coming in saying it's a zanily entertaining action dramedy. The family's chemistry grounds the brother's son in a surprisingly relatable emotional reality. It borrows from Edgar Wright.
Yes, Edgar Wright, definitely. The tone, because it's very colorful. But I think that it's false to say that it's grounded, because Michelle Yeoh at the very end of the episode is chopping up a dead body right next to her son, Bruce.
No, maybe you'd agree more with IndieWire. It says it takes itself too seriously. IGN gave it a 5 out of 10 and says it won't stick to its odd couple comedy, shortchanging some of the funny familial dynamics in favor of tiresome gangster drama. That's why I was asking if there was too much action in there. And then San Francisco gave it the worst review out of all of them. Again, it has a 7.7 on IMDb, and I think like a 60-something on Metacritic. So overall, pretty positive.
But what did San Francisco
say? San Francisco said co-stars are amateurish, so he really didn't like the new talent. And because the show is a tonal disaster. So maybe he's just not a fan of Edgar Wright.
Whenever it did go for the semi-dramatic moments, which I can't think of too many in the episode, I did think that the show slowed down. But it doesn't take itself too seriously. So I didn't feel like it ever, like you were saying, was too much.
Other than the drug thing that Bruce was apparently trying to get into at the same time that his brother was coming over to protect him. Did they show any other type of crime that they were committing? This triad or whatever that he's a part of.
No, it was mostly just the drugs for the first episode.
So you didn't get any sort of human trafficking or silencing journalists or you got the drug smuggling.
No, I didn't get any human trafficking.
I'm just saying things that gangs are known to do. Yeah. The last miscellaneous fact I'll throw in there is that film that Juzo was coming out with at the very end of his life. No, actually, this is about the 1992 one. I'm sorry. The film's timing was very good, and the attack on me made more people interested. But even with all those elements, it still only brought in 1.5 billion yen at the box office, which isn't very much. This shows the decline in the Japanese film industry. And I looked it up, and yeah, the golden age of Japanese film was obviously in like the 50s, the 60s. By the 90s, it was dying out. But I am proud to say that like now with movies like Godzilla -1, that just keeps on breaking records.
Yeah.
It's the all-time highest grossing Godzilla film.
Internationally, yeah.
And not just for international, but for Japan that they've ever made. So that's pretty cool. And I think that he'd be happy to see that today, even though it's not really a societal. Well, no, actually it is. You know, Godzilla, it mentions plenty of society. Any final thoughts that you want to make about the brother-son pilot?
No. Did you ever finish American Born Chinese?
No, and I don't remember if I said I would. I remember there was, he was also from Taiwan, I think, right? Like the kid was in that?
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh, though, her character wasn't as big as it is supposed to be in this. So when talking about this, I think Mama's Son, Charles, Bruce are the main three. Then you got TK. And then there are other names like Alexis and Grace, who I don't think you've mentioned.
I don't think we were introduced to them yet.
All right, well, then I guess we'll just leave it at that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Also, next episode, I think, will be Echo. Probably.
No, yeah.
Maybe. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.